We, of course, continue our conversation about the Trayvon Martin tragedy, and a tragedy it is. I'm joined by Mike Brooks, HLN law enforcement analyst. Mike, to help me with this, the video does not seem to show a bloodied Mr. Zimmerman, and yet the police report, which I've got right here, says that there was grass on his back, he had something on the back of his head, and a bloody nose. What do you make of all that?
Right. It said Zimmerman was also bleeding from the nose and the back of the head. But, Dr. Drew, you're an MD. I was an EMT for over 20 years on the streets of D.C. and in Virginia. And you don't see anything at all when he gets out here. There's no blood on his shirt. If somebody hits you in the nose, you're gonna, and then there's a struggle. You're gonna have blood on the front of the shirt. Then you look at the back of his head, Dr. Drew. You might see just a little tiny mark, but the Sanford Fire Department on the scene, they treated him. And then they released him. He most likely had to sign a release before he was sent to the police station. Dr. Drew, if he had any kind of head trauma from having his head...
Well, Mike, hold on. We're zooming in right now on his head. Wait, get that back up there, guys. We were zooming in on a picture of his head from that video, and you can see his head looks pretty clean. You don't see any major there it is.
No.
No lacerations or anything, nothing on the back of his shirt. No. And by the way, a broken nose bleeds a lot. He should be still applying pressure on that nose if indeed there was bleeding from that. So, and by the way, this is what kills me about this. I sort of don't care. Because what's the implication here, Mike, that next time somebody punches somebody in the nose, they should shoot him?
No, absolutely not. You know, that's the whole thing. But if you look at the injuries, were these injuries that he sustained enough to put him in fear of his life? That's the question here. From what we're seeing, Dr. Drew, I'm not seeing it from my experience as an investigator and an emergency medical technician. I am just not seeing it here, Doctor.
Mike, I totally agree with you. And by the way, if these guys cleaned him up in the car, they would have had gloves on. I mean, again, a fractured nose is a broken nose is a bloody affair. And they would have had to put gloves on. There would have been blood on him, on sheets. There's none of that. There's nothing on the back of his head. And again, I don't care, because what kills me about this is what is the implication of this stand your ground nonsense, which is if somebody threatens you, whatever happened to men being men when, Harry Truman threatened to clobber somebody? He should have been shot right there on the spot? Is that what we're implying?
The stand your ground law does not apply to this particular case. If they want to say it was self-defense, then maybe they can have something to try to prove. But when you look at this video, Dr. Drew, if he had any kind of head trauma on the back, did the EMTs wrap his head up? Did they put some gauze and cling around his head? Absolutely not. And as you said, these officers are handling him. If there was any kind of biohazard, blood on him, they would have gloves on. They don't.
Mike, last question. I got about 30 seconds left.
Sure.
What do you make of these, the wannabe cop and the cop that doesn't follow the dispatcher's recommendations?
He is supposed to be neighborhood watch. The eyes and the ears. Not a vigilante, not taking action, not stopping someone, not even trying to ID anyone. He was told not to follow him. He should have just said, okay. He should have never gotten out of his car to begin with, period.
Thanks, Mike. Lessons here learned for sure. Coming up is another former FLDS leader getting what he deserves. We're going to talk about that. And up next, I'll answer your questions about a lot of things, but especially the Trayvon Martin case. So stick around.
Believe it or not,